Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be checking out the game that can make your dreams come true by Rubik's Raptor. Yes guys, this is in obviously relation to Arma, the Arma series I think in general. I don't know if it's going to be specifically about Arma 3 or what it's about in general. I know my history with the Arma games. I guess I started off on Arma 2. Technically, I never really got to play it too much though, because my internet back in the day was pretty shit. And then from there, I think I went on to the original Daisy mod. But again, same thing, didn't really get to play much of it. Didn't really get to play much Arma until Arma 3, and even that, my experience with Arma 3 has been pretty limited. Did some Hastati type stuff, and that's about it. In a very limited capacity. Daisy from there, standalone Daisy, and now Arma Reforger I've played quite a bit, but besides that, that's about my experience with Arma 3. So yeah, we're gonna see what this video has in store for us. I know this is gonna be more of like a video essay, I guess, kind of style video. I'm not really too sure what it's gonna be involved with it, so yeah, if you guys enjoy, make sure you guys hit that like button, subscribe for more content from me, of course, leave recommendations down in the comments below, and yeah, without any further delay, let's get right into this. We're gonna make sure captions are on, quality is 1440p, full screen, already liked up, and let's get it.
Arma 3 is one of the best military simulators I have ever played. It's also one of the best Warhammer 40k games I've ever played, and one of the best Halo games I have ever played, and even one of the best Half-Life games I've ever played.
Goddamn.
Of course, I'm alluding to the fact that Arma 3 is a very moddable game, and today we are going on a spirit journey through that. The title of this video is incredibly true to me. All I've wanted to do while going through the Halo games was to play as a UNSC Marine, fighting the impossible odds of their galaxy. Through Arma, I have been able to do that. Not just by myself, but with 80 other people, as we got pasted by hunters and glassed by cruisers. One of the most common comments I got on my
I will say it is very cool how Arma, and that's one of the things I think that the fans love about it the most. You can basically turn the game into literally anything that you want. You want to turn it into a World War II game, it's a World War II game. You want to turn it into a Warhammer game, it's a Warhammer game. Halo game. You know, there's mods for just about everything when it comes to Arma, and the game itself, the engine of Arma, is very moddable. Allows for a lot of very interesting stuff to be done in it, I will say.
As we got pasted by hunters and glassed by cruisers. One of the most common comments I got on my Space Marine 2 video was people dreaming of being able to fight a battle as the Guardsman of Cadia. You probably know what I'm getting at, but in Arma, it's just as fun as you might think it would be. I've been able to pretend to be an SG-1 team traveling through stargates to distant worlds, or fight necromancers in a dark forest as the Knights of Reikland. I even got to accompany Snake on his missions as the Diamond Dogs, and all of this is to say that Arma has made countless of my dreams come true, and today I get to talk about that, so yay. That really goes into why I'm making this video, and truthfully, there is quite a few reasons. The first being that I feel a strange mysticism kind of floats around Arma, whether that's from news stations claiming it's real war footage, or the billion comments asking what game it is every time I post a clip of it.
I will say it's pretty hilarious too. Like this footage here, this news footage. Yeah, this has been plastered all over social media. If you haven't seen exactly that clip or clips like it, man, yeah, a lot of that shit was taken straight from Arma. It's pretty funny how they fell for that type of shit.
Real war footage, or the billion comments asking what game it is every time I post a clip of it. I also feel like a good portion of people that might enjoy watching Arma content might be curious about the moving parts that put these crazy events together, because there's a lot of them. Lastly, I've always been bad at explaining the game I play to my father. So hi Dad, hopefully this video explains the game that I left my secure government intelligence job for, but that might be a dream on its own. I could really go on with the reasons why I'm making this video, but at this point I think you get it. And in general, there's just too much to talk about with this game. I really had to narrow the scope just to full conversion mods and dream making, because when you start going into the secret aliens hidden in the Arma files, or the fact that the developers for this game got arrested by the Greek military for spying on NATO bases. Actually, we will go into those, because that's very funny. Regardless, this is probably a video that deserves a better person than me to make it, as Arma is a monolith of unknowable game knowledge and a 20-year-old esoteric code base, but I am going to take a swing at it. My qualifications include a few hours in the game and running my own Arma community. I also had the privilege to interview a dozen or so mod teams, so you will hear much smarter people talk about the game than I. Also, speaking of which, side note, I can't put into words how much I appreciate everyone that makes content for this game. So if I didn't have time to interview you or your team, know that I definitely wanted to, but I couldn't because this entire video I made in 2 weeks. So if you're up for it, let us go on an adventure. An adventure through Star Wars, Command & Conquer, SCP, Fall of Man, Helldivers, Starship Troopers, Dune, Ace Combat, and Battletech. An adventure through Arma 3, a game that can make your dreams come true.
Pretty sweet, actually, I'm not gonna lie. Oh, Jesus.
Our story begins with the developers of Arma 3, that being Bohemia Interactive, a now long-standing studio in modern-day Czechia and or the Czech Republic. Its creators have a fascinating tale from developing games behind the Iron Curtain to creating military software for the United States Marine Corps, all of course for it to culminate in me being able to throw a crack grenade into my friend last weekend.
Jesus.
Oh, that one flew bad.
Oh.
The founders of BI being the brothers, and I'm so sorry for my pronunciation, Marek and Andrej Spanel, which I guarantee you is not how you say their name, as well as Slavomir Pevelek. Definitely didn't get that one right. Regardless, they found their start during the communist regimes of Eastern Europe. As you might expect, getting into programming or even having a computer in those times was a little difficult. The brothers only getting an 8-bit Texas Instrument from a Sweden trip that in an article on their website they said had no storage capability, so they had to rewrite the entire code base of their game every time they restarted it, which sounds like the plight of Sisyphus to me. Of course, with the crumbling of the regimes throughout Europe, the brothers and their business partners were able to start developing on Atari with titles such as Blood and The Invasion of Aldebaran. Though, right after Marek was drafted...
Look at some of these newer games. Look at some of these older games. I've never heard of that. Blood. B-L-O-U-D. Okay, Blood, 1987.
And The Invasion of Aldebaran.
The Invasion of Aldebaran? What the fuck? Okay, yeah, I've never heard of these games before. Damn. Score, S-K-O-R-E. Very nice.
Baran. So, right after Marek was drafted into the Czech army, where they didn't stop developing games even while serving, and eventually coming out with the game Gravon, which truly looks like the primordial ooze that the Arma franchise might have spawned out of. It was also one of the first Czech games to break out and be sold in the West, though that was partly by pure force of will, as a story goes that one of the brothers walked around Paris with a briefcase of Gravon copies selling them. Also, fun side fact, you can actually play Gravon as a minigame in one of BI's later games, Take on Mars. Moving forward, Bohemia Interactive was then officially created in 1999, where a team of 4 began making their own engine called Real Virtuality. This engine would be used to produce their first project, codenamed Poseidon, which would then be later called Operation Flashpoint. Also, fun fact, Arma 3 is still running on the Real Virtuality engine, albeit the 4th version of that engine.
Jesus fucking Christ, yeah. That's been the main complaint with Arma, I think, for a lot of years, is the fact that the engine, while it does allow you to do so fucking much, the engine it's paper and toothpicks, man. That's what the fucking engine runs on, dude. It is not a stable engine at all. If you play Arma 3 for any amount of time, man, any amount of time, you'll have seen some shit. Even Arma Reforger, man, you'll have seen some shit. You know what I mean? The shit is not really avoidable, even in DayZ, arguably. Less so in DayZ, but you do still see some shit, and it's all to do with the Arma engine, guys. And it's because it's a fucking 20, almost 30-year-old engine now at this point. Jesus Christ.
But it's still got a lot of that DNA, which, by the way, is a point a lot of the mod developing teams have pointed out working on it. Also, funny story, but during a Games Expo to promote Flashpoint, they had a T-55 tank next to their game demos. They would later find out that it was a fully functional T-55 tank that they had brought into a show full of hundreds of people, which is very funny to me. Actually very related, but Bohemia Interactive still owns a tank, a T-72 with a disabled firing mechanism, which used to have a Twitter account for it. I think it's gone because I can't find it anymore. Anyway, when Operation Flashpoint released, it quickly became one of the best-selling PC games at the time with over 2 million sales. To say that is a lot at the time is definitely an understatement. People were enthralled by the concept of having a sandbox where you could make your own military adventure and tell your own story within the game, which is something, in my opinion, that the franchise has still held on to this day. Celebrate.
I will say that's kind of crazy. Like, it seems kind of like an open world game, linear. where there's like a battle space and stuff like that. Yeah, 2 million copies back in the day is fucking nuts. That's a ludicrous amount of copies for, I guess, what is it? Probably the 90s at this point. I don't know the year. Maybe you said it, maybe you didn't. I didn't catch it if you did, but goddamn. A lot of copies for this time, that's for sure.
Within the game, which is something, in my opinion, that the franchise has still held on to this day. Celebrating their release, the developers went to the Game Developers Conference in America, where Merrick actually was given an award by Gabe Newell, which is probably someone you're familiar with. At the same time, the success of such a military simulator was not ignored by many, least so Western armies. Bohemia Interactive then having the opportunity to set up a branch office in Australia, which would develop VBS-1. A military training software version of Flashpoint that would be used by notable clients such as the United States Marine Corps. Later versions of the software is still in use today by Western militaries, though the studios that developed them were sold by Bohemia, where they would eventually be owned by the British company Bay Systems. Of course, speeding things up, the next title to come out was Armed Assault, the first game from BI to rock the Arma name, once again finding amazing success and following up with Arma 2, which is my first Arma game I ever played, and man, it was fun. While the game was very positively received on its own, what they probably didn't anticipate was a silly little mod coming around called DayZ. For anyone on YouTube at the time, I do not need to explain how much of an internet sensation Arma 2 DayZ mod was. I am guilty of buying Arma 2 just to play that mod, and it's one of the earliest examples I can think of where Arma began to become a vessel for the creativity and passion of its own community. While they continued to make DLC for Arma 2, like the masterpiece that is Operation Arrowhead, they also started work on
Well, they started to make DLC for the game. Nobody was playing that, and everybody was fucking playing DayZ at that point. I can tell you that right now. No offense, but that's fucking absolutely true. Everybody was playing DayZ at the time, dude. Everybody who was anyone was playing DayZ. That shit was fun as fuck. That original DayZ mod, and even DayZ nowadays, like the standalone DayZ, still very, very fun. Arguably more so. I mean, it's more polished for sure, and I don't recommend vanilla. But if you download some mods, get into some modded servers, DayZ modded servers are very, very enjoyable, is what I will say.
DLC for Arma 2, like the masterpiece that is Operation Arrowhead, they also started work on their next project, which was originally called Arma Futura, which of course would then be called Arma 3. However, at the time to plan for this game, and I kid you not, was a super future sci-fi where we would be fighting aliens. Actually, in one of my interviews with a mod developer, they pointed out that not all of that disappeared, and some of it like secretly resides in the code of Arma 3.
There are textures and models hidden in the Arma 3 like code for a little gray man alien. And they've just been in there since 2013. Like, I don't know why it's there, what its purpose is for, but they just have them hanging out.
What's it?
Reticulon _F_CO.
Has he existed before Contact, or?
Yes.
That's terrifying.
Interesting.
Let him fly, man. Let him out.
That's crazy.
Let him out, Bohemia.
As you also probably heard me mention there, Bohemia did release a alien DLC called Contact, but still pretty far flung from the whole alien invasion game that we could have had. Also recently, as a nod towards what could have been, they did add a vehicle called the Futura Tank. It has a railgun. It's in the basic game now, you can just use it. Also, the setting for this game would be peculiar, that being the Mediterranean. For the main map, they were going to model it off of the Greek island of Lemnos. And since they were committed to the accuracy for their games, what's the worst thing that could happen if a few of them took pictures of military? Okay, well, they got arrested. So 2 of them got arrested by the Greek military for espionage, and not just for a little bit. They were in prison for 129 days before finally being released after a meeting between the Greek and Czech presidents, which was one of the more eventful things that happened during the development of Arma 3, the funny game that we are talking.
I had no idea that the devs went to jail for Arma 3 because they took pictures of Greek military bases. What the fuck? Yeah, I had no idea about that. Yeah, obviously you can't just go up and start taking photographs of a military base. I can definitely see why they might have a problem with that. You know what I mean? Like that is as far as they're concerned espionage to a degree. That gets the wrong person. Like what? Yeah. I'm not gonna sit here and say like, you know, I don't, you know, I agree with like arresting them, but holy fuck, like yeah, that's a bit bold, man. I don't know.
One of the more eventful things that happened during the development of Arma 3, the funny game that we are talking about today, that pretty much brings us up to speed. Besides the fact that Arma 3 is not the latest Arma game, as Arma Reforger exists, but we'll be visiting that as well as circling back to Bohemia in terms of how they interact with their modding community. But for now, we have to tackle the question of what actually is Arma 3.
I wanna ride
Armed Assault 3, in its core principle, is a game where you make a mission and then you play it. There's two ways to do this, either PvP or PvE, and or you could also mix them, but I am going to refuse to go into those semantics. What we are mostly going to be focusing on is the PvE aspect of mission creation. However, we will be circling back to the philosophy that goes into making a PvP mission. When it comes to mission creation, everything starts with the Eden Editor, a marvel of a 3D game design tool fully included and integrated into Arma itself. With the editor, you're first able to pick the terrain you want to work with, and then you give your mission a name. From there, you have thousands of assets ranging from military units to vehicles, buildings, and even pieces of paper that you can adorn your adventure that you're about to create. At this point, I have to pause and bring up one of the strongest statements about this game. Arma 3 is military D&D. It is your job as the dungeon master to weave a story for your players. This can be for just a handful of friends or legitimately hundreds of people. Everyone at once say what their favorite thing in Arma is. Actually, in the case of some talented modders that we will talk to later, Arma can literally be D&D, dice and all. Going forward with that philosophy, the mission maker can get to work. And as a quick and dirty example, let's make a mission. Today, I think it would be good to have a group of soldiers raiding an insurgent weapon cache. The first thing that we're going to do is place down units that we want to become our players, mark them as playable, and tweak their loadouts to something we want. Additionally, we're going to set up a respawn point for them and add that to the mission settings. Also, normally Arma will not save their custom loadouts when they respawn. However, using the mod 3D Enhance gives us that option. Alternatively, since Arma is such a flexible game when it comes to scripting, we can also write something that saves their loadout when they die and then applies it to them when they respawn. Now we're going to set up our bad guy AI in the house as well as decorate it a bit. We don't want these objects to affect our players or server performance, so we're going to disable the simulation on them. And then lastly, for some fun, we're going to set up a trigger at the house that calls local forces around them to come reinforce the house once these soldiers get there. This is an absolutely simple example of a mission, but reflects one of the 3 core mission design strategies, which is a pre-designed curated mission. All of our AI are placed, the objective is static, and once it's in the hand of the players, the mission maker's job is done. However, there are 2 other ways to go about it. The second is something that is above my knowledge base, which is procedural generation. Through Arma alone, you can write scripts that dynamically create objectives, spawn enemies, and run the game world live, much like any other PvE game would. Examples of these are player-made modes such as Invade and Annex, Liberation, and Hastati, and by far, these are the hardest to make. But they're also the most rewarding, as you can play against the machine, and it is a wonderful way to get into Arma and play a unique mission experience with your friends. It's also prone to goofy moments like playing Mike Force and having the script spawn an actual legion of enemies who destroy everything you love.
Jefferey already killed all the people that could counterattack.
Oh my god! The last strategy is probably the most iconic and important to the overall success of Arma 3, that being Zeus. Zeus is a feature that was added to Arma 3 after release, and I desperately want the names of the people who came up with it because they are my heroes. When I mentioned that Arma was military D&D, this is actually that. Live during the game, you are a free-flying camera that can spawn enemies, mess with the environment, and interact with your players all while the mission is actively going on. You can change objectives depending on how things are going, decide what happens to your players on the fly, and most importantly, you're able to tell a fun and engaging story just like a dungeon master in D&D would. The stuff that this tool lets you do is groundbreaking and is a key reason why it's made Arma a perfect place to bring your dreams to fruition. A big thing is that you can direct the enemy to act more like real people, like a real commander is controlling them. For example, in a case from my past video where you saw a defensive wall light up with armaments, it was actually a Zeus suppression command given by the game master. Zeus also lets you directly control any AI unit on the map, which is a dangerous power to have. On one hand, it can fully challenge your players and immerse them into the feeling that they are fighting a real enemy, but on the other hand, it's easy to get ahead of yourself and obliterate the people playing your mission. After all, you are literally God. You can kill anyone you want at any time and no one can stop you. So instead of remote controlling a unit that you place behind your friends, a good Zeus purposely pulls their shots, does goofy things, and prioritizes their players' fun over everything, which is definitely something you can find happening to us a lot in our Arma adventures.
Hold behind you. Failed stealth again.
Boom! What the fuck was that? However, like with most things, this comes with a caveat. Depending on the group that you're playing with, some may be looking for a more serious environment where players want to be punished for their mistakes or that goofs might take away from the immersion that they are looking for. There's of course nothing wrong with either style of play, whether you enjoy room clear and milsim or third person abusing casual play, as I am terribly guilty of. The important thing is that you're enjoying yourself.
That is
and
the
that
worst
if you're
shit.
Zeus, that you know.
I will say, if you play third person and you fucking wall peek, you're scum. Okay. I usually play only first person though. I'm more into the hardcore aspect myself.
Your audience and that you're delivering the adventure everyone came there for. Moving on, another crazy thing that Arma lets you do is run scripts and code live during an event. So in the hands of a talented scripter or programmer, like for example my friend Scorch, the game is truly putty in your hands and delivers an experience unmatched by anything I have ever played.
Fuck you, Olga.
Evil
Fuck
script.
you.
Oh.
Fly, bitch.
Oh.
Now, with all those methodologies laid out, I can tell you that a lot of the time, a mission will use all three of these simultaneously. For example, you might first create a static mission, set up the environment and objectives, and then add procedural modules for stuff like enemy movement and fire support. A great example for this specifically is stuff like mods developed by fellow Arma YouTuber Remy, which includes light AI fire support, which puts the ball in the court of AI far more dynamically than setting up static AI responses. Then, once the mission is done, you can run it alongside Zeus, able to guide the story, assist players when they inevitably blow themselves up, and increase the challenge when necessary. This brings me back to reiterate that the Eden Editor and Zeus are some of the most critical pillars towards Arma 3's success, and why it's able to deliver dream-creating wonders through modding. This is also not just my opinion, but something that came from a lot of the interviews and conversations I had with modders.
Being a mission maker myself, without Eden, like Zeus is nice, don't get me wrong, but a 3D editor where you can do anything you want, like I've made some crazy stuff in Eden just to make a 5-minute cool set piece that somebody will look at, even if it's like it took me 2 hours to make. I think it is vital, especially in the overhaul communities where you do like Warhammer, you do anything else, Halo.
Well, it's like a game dev tool that's built into the game.
And it's fantastic.
I remember being a mission maker for Arma 2, and we can't go back to that.
Well,
I mean,
you guys all
even
remember
Arma
when
3.
Arma 3 launched with only a 2D editor.
Yeah, like till 2016.
That's
I remember
sick.
I
For
was,
my day.
yeah, I was watching the dev videos about like they're putting a new 3D editor. I'm like, the whoa?
I really divide Arma into like multiple ages, which is telling on how old this fucking game is, but
The Dark Age to the Golden Age.
like
Yeah,
the first
literally.
year was the age of no, I'm gonna still play Arma 2.
The Age of
followed
Strife,
by
yeah.
The Sumatras and the Altus Life like script set missions that were run by dedicated servers, followed by dedicated life servers, followed by the Eden editor coming out, and then the unit renaissance of them being able to make missions every week. I also have to point out before we move on that even 10 years after release, Eden still gets new features to create missions with. Recently, and I probably have to credit the Bohemia developer Deadman Miller, who by the way is a god. I'm pretty sure he's one of the last devs fully committed to Arma 3, and he has worked on some fantastic updates and fixes for the game very late into its life. That being
Red
said,
Bull.
one day we randomly got terrain deformation, like the ability to move land up
Holy
and
shit.
down and to literally mold the entire world in the Eden editor. We definitely
That's
have
pretty
some
sick.
mission makers in Ignis that immediately abuse that to the point of collapse in reality, but I just thought it was important to mention. And hopefully that has started to cover the
Oh my God.
schematics, or at least the bare bone framework of a PvE mission. We can then quickly address some stuff that goes into a PvP mission. In most instances, making a PvP mission is more complicated and easier at the same time. When creating the mission, you don't need to worry about setting up the AI and what they're going to do and mission objectives controlled by said AI. However, you do need to account for real people, and knowing the general Arma player base, that is a catastrophic Herculean task. In a
Yeah.
lot of cases as well, you are building an asymmetric mission where each side of the player base has different advantages and disadvantages adding to the complexity. In reference to the modding side of Arma, a lot of the mods are not set up for PvP. For example, in Imperial Conquest, the guardsmen just default have more health and armor than the Chaos Cultist. So, when you are like me and you are building a cultist versus guardsman PvP operation, you suddenly find that you have to replace the armor of the cultist, or else the guardsmen can just take 7 more las bolts than their enemy. In general though,
How
PvP
realistic.
missions can be far more engaging mentally because you're fighting the greatest game, man. But there is some of the camaraderie and laid-back atmosphere that you do lose when you're not playing a PvE mission. A lot of the times in our group, we focus on much more arcadey PvP missions, such as King of the Hill or Elimination or Infection. However, a lot of fantastic groups do large-scale battles that more resemble a military movement. Some, off of the top of my head, are Coalition or Friday Night Fights, which host fantastic, massive events between players and delivers an experience that's completely unique from a PvE mission in both how they are played and how they are made. I'm not going to go any deeper into the intricacies of trying to balance two sides in an Arma mission, but you can kind of get the vibe on similarities and differences, as well as why modding might handle each of these mission types a little differently. For example, off of the top of my head, there's a homebrew sci-fi universe mod called Scion Conflict, which was originally designed just for a PvP group. However, Operation Trebuchet, the Halo mod, which we are going to cover very soon, was more designed with a PvE environment in mind. Actually, on that note, I feel like we've established a pretty basic foundation on how Arma works, so now we get to go into some of the outstanding mods made for it that essentially turned it into a different game. Though, I want to end this section with a capstone. Arma 3 has its own single-player campaign, and the devs gave the players every tool they used to make their own. The only thing I can think to compare that to is Valve giving its player base Source Filmmaker after it made all of its promotional animations. Like, hey, we were able to create something really cool with this. Here you go. And I truly believe that's one of the reasons Arma 3 is so successful and why it is so fun to play. I believe it is now mod time.
Halo, okay.
The first mod that I want to cover is Operation Trebuchet, a full conversion Halo mod developed.
I want to say too, I do know of a lot of the mods for Arma. Again, I'm not new to Arma. I have all the games. I've been with it since Arma 2, so I am privy to a lot of these mods, is what I will say. There might be some in here that I haven't heard of though. So let's see. And I haven't seen any. I don't think I've seen any of was it Rubik's Raptor? I don't think I've seen any of his content. I might have seen the odd video or something pop up in like my subscriptions or something like that, or in not my subscriptions, my recommendations, just on YouTube. But yeah, I don't think I've ever actually like went on my way to like see his videos before. So maybe we actually have to check out some of his more operation videos sometime. If you guys want to see it, let me know.
By the Passion Studio Article 2. This mod brings to life not just one Halo game, but an array of assets from the entire franchise. For example, you can play as a Halo 3 Marine, drive the Sun Devil from Halo Ground Command, or use one of the dozens and dozens of guns from the mainline games. OpTray is an enormous mod. The amount of talented work this group of modders has put into this project is probably deserving of an hour-long video essay on its own. And since I am a masochist, I decided to place as many assets as I could find from the mod into one place. This is terrifying to look at, and something I brought up to one of the lead developers of the project.
You know, it's got a lot of crap in it.
There's a
We're
lot.
not for maybe too long.
It's a declarative statement, but like I feel like the OpTray asset folder is like bigger than an individual Halo game.
I mean, we're
like,
gonna look right now.
Holy shit.
The current,
There's a
working
lot of
directory
shit.
size of the Operation Trebuchet distro, like the GitHub, is 70 gigabytes. So yeah, it's about the size
that
of
is
a modern
game
AAA
size.
game.
Now, given all these assets, you can do a lot with it. Off the top of my head, we've dropped from orbit as ODSTs, fought with Spartans on the Glassing of Arcadia, and dealt with the flood at Installation 04. We've also defended Earth in the city of New Mombasa and violently evaded taxes as the insurrectionists in the Aradnus system.
Oh my
the amount
God.
of stuff that these mods let you do has fulfilled pretty much every single one of my daydreams for Halo, besides maybe fighting the brutes. There's no brutes yet. However, there's like everything else. I could go into about 1,000 different things about
Those
this
ships
mod,
look
but in the hope
insane.
of not having a video length to rival Pyrocynicals, I'm going to focus on two. One of the most impactful things about this mod is the Spartans.
My God.
For that matter, the elites. It's lost on us,
That
or at
makes
least
sense.
me, who haven't been tortured by Arma's code base, but to actually create a playable 8-foot tall powered armor superhuman is a terrible amount of work. These aren't normal models, so they had to completely design its own skeleton for the game. That also means recreating every animation for them, from shooting to even sitting in a car. And in fact, the dark magic to create one in the first place was like lost lore in the modding community for a while, which was brought up in the interview.
I think at the start we had kind of just accepted, like off rip, that the idea of Covenant armor was basically impossible. That it was like kind of infeasible. So we didn't even really entertain the idea of doing that for the longest time. It wasn't until we had people like all but begging us to let them join the team and work on Covenant that we were like, okay, fine. Drake Darren is what the name he goes by, like Discord. I am a firm believer that like Covenant as they exist now would not be a thing if not for that man. He pretty much single-handedly made the elite and all that like a reality through a sheer force of will and French determination.
French determination. Oh.
Custom skeleton, because I remember you faintly mentioning at some point it was the same person that also did the Space Marine custom skeleton.
It was, which I wasn't made aware of until much later after he had done it. But that guy apparently is like a fey wizard trickster or something, because apparently what happened, and I got all this like way after the fact, after years of wondering what the hell happened. But apparently he showed up one day to the TIOW team and was like, you know, like a dark jester in the night, was like, I have this magic way of making this thing you've always dreamed of. Made it, didn't explain it at all, and then disappeared. TIOW actually does genuinely have like 40k lore
actual lost technology. Yeah,
they don't know how to mess with that Space Marine skeleton. I shouldn't say that with such authority. Fucking YouTube
I
shouldn't say that with such authority.
Be like, actually, idiot, we can. You're stupid.
Yeah, I'm sure they've cracked some part of that shell, because like Web Knight's like melee mod introduces custom
they would have
skeletons
had
and
to.
whatnot. Yeah.
But I do know for the longest time, like nobody else knew how to do it, and it's the same boat with us up until pretty much until Web Knight started doing stuff where he made that, was around for about a year, and then one day just stopped posting. Doesn't reply to any DMs.
Does anyone know where he is, or is he just
on, like,
gone?
No clue. The word on the grapevine I have heard is that apparently he goes by a new name and is working on a new mod now. And I'm just gonna let that dog lie. I don't. He's done his service to the mod. I'm happy. I don't need him to come back if he doesn't want to.
Now is probably a good time to mention my other point, which is that Uptrade is not the only Halo mod, and that there's a few that contribute to create a perfect experience. The first one that's obviously worth mentioning is Web Knight's Uptrade expansion. This completely reworked how the elites act and made them perform just like you might expect from a mainline Halo game. It also added grunts and hunters to bring the Covenant roster into a fleshed out state for PvE. Fun fact on these also, if I remember right, Scorch, one of the devs for Uptrade, took Web Knight and had him play through all of the Halo games because he never had, and that's part of the reason that this mod exists. Another mod that adds a bunch was called Precursors, a mod developed in part by Devour King, which adds Flood to the game, which was incredible when it came out. It's my favorite enemy to fight in the Halo universe, and to do so in Arma with like 80 of your friends was incredible. The last awesome mod I wanted to mention was Mizraya Armories, or Mizraya Armor. I have never been able to pronounce that fictional gun manufacturer's name, and I'm not going to start today. Regardless, this team's work adds a lot of very high quality armors and textures that I just can't get over how good they are. There's also the mod team associated with the first MAU, a Halo Arma group. They have added absolutely fantastic things to the game, like for example the Sentinels from Forerunner facilities or Covenant ships. More and more, we find that we're always using their mod when we play Halo, and I'm just thankful there's another amazing talented team contributing to this awesome universe. And this is also partly to say this is a vital aspect of full conversion in Arma. It is very common for there to actually be multiple mod teams and projects that can all be used together to create amazing stuff. This is especially true with the Warhammer 40k side of things, but we'll get to that in a second, because the last thing I wanted to touch on was terrain. Terrains, or maps in Arma, are Leviathans. The default map for Arma 3, Altus, is 268 square kilometers wide.
That's also another thing too, I will say, that has always been impressive about Arma, has been the size of the maps, how big they are, right? I mean, you can do so much, you can pack so much in there. It really does feel like it is an alive world around you, especially you get a Zeus going in there, as he says. You know, like, you can do so much with Arma. I almost wish I got to experience Arma a little bit more. Arma 3, Arma 2 a little bit more. Because again, back in the day, you know, my internet was just so shit. I just never got the opportunity really to play online games at that point. So man, I feel like I really missed out. I would like to try some Arma 3, like modded Arma 3 at some point, because I play Reforger, but Reforger is very limited in what you can do with it right now currently. So yeah, I still think Arma 3 is the king for sure.
3 Altus is 268 square kilometers wide. Goes without saying, that is very big. Also, it's one of the main draws to the Arma series, as you can truly have massive spanning wars and battles. However, when it comes to making them, it's a lot of work, which only makes the terrains in Optre all the more impressive. One of the main people who made them being a developer known as Nightovizard, also one of my favorite terrain creators in Arma that I also had the privilege to interview.
As you know, I've mostly worked on terrains. Some of you already know about like Madrigal and Arcadia, Colo,
Yeah, they're
the
awesome.
Halo Ring maps. I've also done some Star Wars maps for Legion specifically.
Yeah, the
You know,
Legion.
Ender, for example, it was actually my first for Star Wars. Also done that orangey Geonosis map on the other.
Still a great map.
Oh,
Very orange.
Yeah, well, in Arma it's quite hard to do because it's all numbers and it's all config, so you don't have any preview of what you are doing, so you need to do some maths pretty hard to get it right, honestly. The user interface for the Arma 3 tools are very
They're old. Yeah.
they have a very archaic look. When Arma 3 was announced, I was already quite excited because I played a lot of Arma 2, so Arma 3 looked like a much better game. 2014, many mods started appearing, and Optre was one of them. So when I saw that Halo, game of my childhood that I spent a lot of hours into, was coming to Arma, I said, okay, I have to learn how to do something. We had no information, no documentation. Almost nobody had experience with the tools in Arma 3. So 2015 or 16, I contacted someone from the Optra dev team. I think it was Lumnuon. He was making some of the Optra maps, for example, Iberus and Block Gulch. And one afternoon, they just called me and showed me a little bit of the process and clarified me some of the things I had questions for. 1 year later, 2 years later, I had Madrigal finished.
I think Madrigal is super special because it's one of the few maps that blends open terrains with a city. Like the Madrigal city itself is very unique, combined with the surrounding areas of it, kind of make it a one-of-a-kind Arma map.
I had so many different ideas for an Arma terrain, or for different Arma terrain. Let's just put everything into one map. City, okay, let's do it. Underwater ruins, okay, let's do it too. Fortresses, okay, let's just go and do a D-Day outpost. When I started working on it, I had many issues. The object placement for terrains, we didn't have Eden back in the day.
Oh, I mission make in Arma 2. So the 2D editor, that was awful.
You get the idea.
Yeah.
That's why you will notice that many things in that map are not really placed very well, and some are floating, and it's very hard to fix because I have to go around and look for them, and you know, at the end I moved on. Madrigal, I don't know if you saw the old one, but when it comes to textures, it has changed a lot over the years.
Installation 04 is also a fantastic map.
I use a new tool for terrain making for Installation 04, and it was mostly for natural environments. When I saw the results that tool gave me, the first thing I thought is I have to do the Halo Ring map.
I noticed that for the texturing of that map, you can kind of see like water flow patterns in the actual like hillsides and whatnot.
Yeah, way more complex to use, but I spent a lot of time with it, and I managed to get something that looked a bit more realistic and more interesting. Personal favorite terrain, I think Harvest is shaping to be my favorite terrain, maybe.
Oh, and that's one you're working on right now,
I'm
right?
still working on it right now.
Awesome.
And, not as interesting as Madrigal in terms of location. In overall looks, it looks pretty nice.
Obviously, it was awesome to interview Nightovizard. Fun fact, he also did a ton of textures for Optrade, like the Warthog and whatnot, which I think is definitely worth mentioning. I do think that wraps up our wonderful jaunt through the Halo part of Arma. So finally moving on and returning to the theme that a lot of Arma modding experiences come from a wide variety of talented teams' hard work, let's talk about Warhammer.
There we go. This should be interesting. I will say, Warhammer, you know, again, prior to a few months ago now, I guess, back in January, I was never a Warhammer fan, so I will say Warhammer in Arma is one of the things I really don't know much about. I'm going to be very interested to see now that I actually know what certain stuff is, right? What it looks like in Arma here. Let's see.
Nowadays, it is very rare in Arma to join a modded event that has less than 5 mods being used. For Warhammer stuff, that is especially true. Let's take this event where we are playing as the Mechanicus as an example. In this freeze frame alone, we have Space Marines from TIOW, an Armiger from WK Knights, a tank from Imperial Conquest, a Skitarii from Grimdark Armories, Tech Priest from Treaty of Olympus, Sword and Shield from Improved Melee System and Age of Darkness, Skitarii weapons from Grimdark and Machine Spirit, all while being played on a terrain from TIOW2. That is not even half of the mods that were used in this operation, but makes for an easy way to say that experiencing the Warhammer universe is a collaborative experience modding-wise. It's also at this point that I want to shout out another YouTuber that goes by Poncha that has already delved into the Warhammer side of Arma modding, as well as interviewed a bunch of those teams. I'm not going to be interviewing a lot of them for that reason, but if you are interested, I'll have his video linked in the description. Going back to the arsenal of mods available for Warhammer, just like Halo, it's given us the ability to create an unimaginable number of amazing scenarios. It is also a long list, so brace yourself, here I go. We have played as the Tau against Khorne cultists, the Elysian drop troops killing the Brotherhood of Sek, of course the Cadians on about a dozen planetary battles, Zeech cultists opening a hell portal on a swamp planet, Kalarn armored guard, Thunder running across a desert world, the Dark Angels hunting down traitor space marines, the Hurricane Warhawks disabling orbital guns, a feudal regiment reinforcing Imperial Knights, the Krieg in the Siege of Vrax, the Valhallans hunting Gene Stealers in the sewers, Ultramarines recreating Dawn of War, the Iron Warriors sieging the Imperial Fist killing Iron Warriors, and of course orcs being killed by the Bosnian Knight. I'm going to stop there, one, because I need to breathe, but also that I am realizing that I can keep going. I have had incredible fun with these mods. One event that always sticks out to me is when we had multiple platoons of dozens and dozens of tanks participating in such a large armored field battle that it felt like the air was vibrating. Dude, I have a constant, like, thunder is shaking in my headset. It all really is just so breathtaking. And of course, I would not be doing it justice if I didn't shout out some of these specific projects responsible for it. The first one that comes to mind is There Is Only War, or TIOW. As far as I can remember, they were the first big project to start bringing Warhammer to life, and I think their lineage can be traced all the way back to Flashpoint, if I am remembering correctly. The amount of assets in their creative library, much like Optre, rivals AAA games, and I honestly can't think of the last Warhammer event we've done that didn't use their mod. Also, if you're interested in that mod, I know they continued development of it through a separate mod called TIOW2. That also segues me into another fantastic mod, which is Imperial Conquest. The quality of assets for this one are fantastic, and their take on iconic vehicles like the Chimera is super refreshing to me, although they've definitely gotten pushback about expressing creative liberties with an established IP, as was expressed to me in an interview I had with Rogue, one of the creators of it.
It was one of our design mottos, trying to make everything look like it function.
Yeah, the Chimeras, I love the Chimeras in ICP. They're definitely different than what you see on like a box of Warhammer figurines. But I'm assuming that's what you're talking about, where like they look like an actual war vehicle in ICP. So I'm assuming that's where some of the community strife is coming from.
Yeah, same happened with the Demon Rust, to the point where he actually started making changes to bring it more in line, and that happened quite a few times. But at the same time, you know, it's 40k.
I'm going back.
Oh boy, what you working on?
New mod. There's a wonderful game called Space Marine 2, and the Cadians are looking mighty fine. It's not enough.
I will say, to me, it's kind of bullshit that they would have to switch that. I mean, at the end of the day, it's their mod, right? I mean, they're making stuff Warhammer-esque. You know, in the case of it being exactly like it is on the miniature, sure, I can maybe understand how that would irk some people, but it's not a major difference. And the fact that it is a military simulator game that it's being put into, the fact that it looks like more practical, more realistic, I don't really have a problem with that in the context of like the fact that it's Arma, right? I don't know. I don't mind that, right? I mean, and to say like, you know, there isn't like a battlefield modification or whatever have you in the Warhammer universe, I mean, shit, something I'm sure to that degree could potentially happen, you know? Like I don't know. I'm willing to give them the liberty to express that. I don't see a problem with that. I don't see why people would hate on them for that.
Too, and the Cadians are looking mighty fine. It's not announced yet. 'Cause
Yeah.
if I announce it and then people will flood my DMs, which is unfortunate.
Do you want me to not include that in the video?
I don't mind. I don't really mind.
Of course, other mods that come to mind are Refortification, Culvero's Factions, and Grimdark Armories, Department Minatorum, and like a dozen or so other mods that a lot of the time are required to make the experience whole. There's also, of course, the Greenskins mod, along with the Imperial Knights, all of which has been created by our local code magician, Web Knight. The design on these knights are incredible, from their custom heads-up display to their defense and armaments, even their melee interaction. It is truly
really
amazing
Holy
that
shit.
we have this as a free mod in our community, and I can't stop playing with this mod. I believe that's also my cue to talk about Web Knight, because this dude is a
sick.
force of nature. I of course interviewed him, but I also wanted to quickly go over his repertoire because it is terrifying. As I've mentioned, he's made the Knights, the Greenskins, and Optre expansion, but he's also made an entire melee system for Arma. This is the last game I expected to have a sword fight in, but through manifestation, Web Knight has made it so. And on top of that, it's a really cool system that just keeps getting updated. Going off of the melee system, he's also made Jedi with force powers and lightsabers included. He's also added melee to Warhammer Space Marines, Spartans, and even the Half-Life Combine. Good time to mention, he has an entire Half-Life mod with a fully playable roster of Combine and Striders, which again, fantastic game experience. He's made a suite of droids for Star Wars, a custom parkour system, and an exosuit mod, as well as several sound and quality of life mods for the game. Not stopping there, he's also made an entire flight and combat system inspired off of Ace Combat and Project Wingman, flamethrower systems, weapon mods, and even a zombie and monster mod, which includes some true aberrant terrors. This dude also has a bunch of terrifying unreleased projects, which who knows if they'll ever see the light of day, but man, some of them are scary. He's also made a few terrains, but at this point, what can he not do? And on that note, let's get into the interview with him because it was a treat. Like, you have 5 pages on the workshop. I'm just gonna go over some highlights real quick.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Jay, I gotta show you something.
Oh.
That's 5 pages of stuff that you can see, right? For me, it's 8 pages.
Holy cow.
A lot of things. For me, Arma is a sandbox, like starting with a big letter S, right? If there's something that not existing in a workshop or never meant to be in Arma, I have this like deep gremlin feeling inside of me. I'm like, I should try to put it in Arma.
Why is
it
that in there?
You have. I implemented a melee system, an Ace Combat flight combat system, and I mean, just the concept of an Imperial Knight is crazy.
It's hard to do melee in Arma, especially, right?
Yeah,
For example,
it seemed impossible, so I was shocked that you did it at all.
Yeah, it's like I just had an idea of like a medieval type of thing in Arma, and I was thinking that I could manage to crack the engine, and make it work. I made it work, but I would say I'm getting back to it. That will be one of my things that I want to redo. And I constantly have that struggle in me that I should make new stuff with the new things that I learned, but at the same time, I'm kind of leaving all of my old work that people are still using, and I kind of feel obligated to get back and fix it. I just treat them as my babies, right? I made them myself, right? And how could I just abandon one? You need to understand, I have a crazy amount of hours in Arma.
Oh, I believe you.
Yeah.
It's probably catastrophic.
I am ashamed of myself, right?
You should tell me your hours right now.
I'm just gonna send you a little screenshot.
Okay.
Right? I'm scared to pronounce that amount. All right.
20,000 hours. Oh my fucking
I have to
god.
calculate this in days. 836 days.
So
that is almost 3 years.
It is
What the
the
fuck?
only game that I can play with all of my friends at once. And there is no any other game that I can, just gather up the boys and just play with them. I need to give credit where the credit needs to be given to Arma developers, right? They made something not just amazing, right? They basically pioneered the sandbox experience. A lot of people are calling Arma 3 military sandbox or like milsim.
Just a sandbox in general.
But I would even go further and just take military out of the question.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because I hosted a D&D, like an actual D&D session, where players were playing as a part of the village, surviving during like a flood event on Altis, and we didn't shot a single round during that, and we were playing it for like a week. So it's not only a military thing.
Actually, a great thing to point out is you were definitely around for this period of time in Arma's life, but remember the period of life servers where that was just the main thing?
Yes.
Roleplay assault miner or paramedic.
I worked with those kind of people, right?
Yeah.
Back in the day, I was doing commissions. I was animating like simple gestures, you know, or like animations, dance animations, and stuff like that. They are still holding up, to be honest.
There are
a lot
some.
of people are still.
But it used to be like a zeitgeist, like Tim the Tatman, like top streamers Lyric were playing Arma, and feel like a lot of them went to GTA RP, probably.
Yes.
That's a crazy period, like a time capsule.
Which is a crazy jump.
Why Arma isn't just a military simulator.
Battle Royale was a big thing, and I remember that because the guy who made PUBG, right? It was actually PlayerUnknown Ghost Hotel Battle Royale. It was like the little thing where you spawn around a ghost hotel on Altis. It's like on the top right. I'm so cooked, man. I know the Altis map like exactly. I'm just sitting here and I know exactly.
I mean, you have spent 836 human days.
I'm ashamed of it.
Rotations of our planet on this game. The Goliath, because that's a crazy mod. How was that process going through that?
I was talking with one of the guys from the Warhammer unit, like Space Marine specifically, and they told me that Smasher, well, it's great for like regular humans. It's very dangerous, quote unquote. I scripted in a way that you can fight with it in melee, both as a human and Space Marine. And like a lot of people in his unit were just like charging Smashers, and it wasn't a threat. So he wanted some kind of a beast/creature that would put like a hold on like a Space Marine assault, you know, if they're like storming, I don't know, a Chaos Fortress, right? This thing appears and everybody switch focus onto that one. It's basically like a raid boss.
Oh, it is. It is devastating. I don't know if you saw the SCP Gen Zero we did. It wiped out an entire defense point and then wasn't satisfied, so it ran to the next one and killed half of that one.
Plus Scorch putting a fucking speed up script on it.
Jesus.
I was like, oh man, he loves do that shit.
He does.
Yeah, so that model was bought from Sketchfab from the same guy who made Smasher. And when we looked at the poly count, it was like 500,000 polygons. And I'm like, okay, how the fuck are we supposed to make it work in Arma? And so Serva came in clutch and remodeled some of the parts, as well as redid all the textures because the original OG textures are like 4K.
We're going to abruptly cut the interview there. However, he's going to return in like a few seconds because a lot of the other projects that I wanted to cover, fun fact, he also worked on. These mods are also going to continue the theme that Arma doesn't need to be played in the way that it was designed. So a great way to showcase that is a mod that turned it into a medieval adventure game. I am talking about Empires of Old, a Warhammer Fantasy mod that adds state troops, witch hunters, the undead, and even a steam tank. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that the developer...
I'll be honest, I had no idea that existed. Empires of Old, holy shit, so it turns it into fantasy Warhammer. That's really cool. This looks a lot different. I'm looking at this and I was like, this is Arma still? Like, holy shit, you know? I did not know anything about this. This is arguably way cooler because it's like, you know, it's not the context of guns and stuff like that. It's fantasy. It's old world. Damn. Okay, let's see what this has in store for us.
Witch hunters, the undead, and even a steam tank. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that the developers over in Czechia probably didn't intend for their game to be played like this. However, through the collaboration of a bunch of creative people, it is a reality. It's also funny because being able to do this was one of my greatest dreams in Arma, to keep the video theme going. And years ago, I had a miserable kit bash of mods to try to create it. However, to now have dedicated mod projects for it is outstanding. And I, of course, interviewed some of the developers for it, Web Knight included. The specific one I am going to ask about is Empires of Old, because that is some fuckery.
That is some fuckery. This looks cool, man.
In Arma, and we're going to talk about it. What foul demon possessed you to make a medieval melee-focused mod in a military shooter sandbox?
I'll run you through it. So obviously we saw the videos from Ignis when you guys did the Warhammer Fantasy. Cool. Everybody's played, well, not everybody, but a lot of people played like the Total War games, and I love Total War. I think we were doing Imperial Knight stuff at the time with like the Torren group, like back when we did that joint liberation where we showed up the Imperial Knights, and I was just like sitting there, I was like, man, it'd be kind of cool if we did fantasy in this. And so we just started getting like I have this collective of modelers in my friend group that I'm like, all right, it's time to gather. It's the mod minds, and I'm like, you make this and you make that, and then I'll texture it, and then Servo puts it in game. We weren't really expecting it to get to the point that it did, but then Webb came along and he's like, I'm gonna make your enemy AI cool, and we're like, this is epic.
Yeah, because Webb worked on the Necromancer, right?
He did the Necromancer, he did the Karn Wraith.
The
Blood
Those
Knight.
are crazy. The Karen
Awesome.
specifically, like seeing that in this dark forest, I was like,
my God.
That's not Arma. that's a
Yeah,
ghost.
it really feels like you're in a different game. You got all the HUD off.
looks
and
a
you've
lot
got
different, yeah.
Sword with a melee system, and then demons are teleporting behind you. It completely changes everything.
And the flintlock. The best addition
Flintlock.
that I ever made to this
Jesus.
game is ability to shoot you a fellow guy with a fucking flintlock, with a blicky.
Is it the alternate fire for the rapier one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Was that inspired off of the Vermintide Salt Spire?
Oh, yeah.
Attack?
Of
Yeah,
course.
okay.
As well as the fire sword fire dash, I think it's
Yeah,
called.
the fire
It's the
dash.
Sienna's ability, basically.
I had to stop most of the development after the steam tanks, and
I think it was crazy.
yeah, Scorch was a big help with getting the steam tank.
Damn,
in,
dude.
So that's a big thing for
flintlock
him. And
fucking
then obviously
slaps.
the cannons, which have just been completely devastating.
it's a flintlock,
and,
so-
nobody wanted to work, and it's totally it happens. It's the Arma burnout, and you move from one genre to another, and I mean, goodness, look at the amount of mods that Webb has made.
I don't want to think about it. I mean, honestly, when we play Age of or
Oh, wow,
Affairs of
that
Gold,
Steam Tank looks
it
sick.
feels like a finished project. It pretty much has everything I'd want besides maybe an entire Skaven faction, but that is asking a lot.
Everybody wants Skaven, let me tell you.
Great thing to mention, but those same guys also made a Helldivers mod, most notably a Helldivers mod
really?
before Helldivers 2 came out, so we got a lot of accusations that
Really?
we willed that game into existence because we created it in Arma. Moving on with doing terrible things to the Arma engine, what about turning it
Maybe.
into an RTS? The wonderful developers over at Tiberium Genesis have answered that question, though it's worth mentioning there are multiple mods that have turned Arma into an RTS, which is once again a testament to how widely modded this game is. However, I was able to interview the people over at Tiberium Genesis, and we've played with their mod a ton, so I obviously had to go into it a little bit.
So started has this in June 2004 for the game Operation Flashpoint.
Jesus.
It's a bit ago.
2003 I did my first add-on. It was an Apocalypse tank from Red Alert 2.
Okay.
T80 with 2 barrels. I've started first alone with my brother. It was first called Command Conquer mod for Operation Flashpoint, also CNC mod for OFP. Then I've found some other guy from the Netherlands. His name was Cheetah. He did a Titan, GDI Titan. Also Jack has joined as mission scripted, so Jack Hammersmith. Our dream was to make a RTS and FPS mode, so that you are able to build your own base and attack the enemy base. We are still on that. We have a working energy system, a working Tiberium system with growing Tiberium fields.
Super cool that you're not just making a full conversion mod, you're also making game modes along with it. Yeah.
It's building, the commander is building the base at the moment.
It rebuilds destroyed stuff, so if enemy is destroying your defenses or whatever.
And is this wall just being built right now by the AI?
Yes.
That's really cool.
Like, see, you can
That
see
is
the
really
cargo on the
cool.
top, and cargo is unloaded. Animation is being played, and then I can move to the Tiberium field and harvest Tiberium.
Is there any other
That reminds me a lot of Battlezone. I don't know if you guys ever heard of a game called Battlezone before. It's on Steam now. Older game. I think the first one, Battlezone 1, I want to say that came out in 98, I want to say. And Battlezone 2, I think came out in 2000 or 2001. Both those games I played extensively. Both were literally what they're describing here. Sci-fi RTS first-person shooter. Very weird concept, but worked very, very well, I have to say. It had that RTS element in that first shooter, in first-person shooter, third-person shooter environment. Very, very fun game. If you guys have not heard of Battlezone, I recommend. You can find them both on Steam. Battlezone 2 is very, very fun, and there's workshop support for those games now too. So yeah, and you can get it, I think, on sale for like literally $2. Fun game, good investment.
Being played, and then I can move to the Barium field and harvest the Barium.
Is there any other notes that you think were a big part why Arma 3 was your choice to mod?
Mostly the freedom to do whatever you want. So you even can do FIFA on it.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, honestly, you can do everything. You can play Predator. You can play Halo. You can play Warhammer. You play a lot of Warhammer mods. You can do mostly everything.
Moving on from that cool stuff, I think the last universe I want to cover in terms of full conversion mods is the universe of Star Wars. This one's important because it was not only one of the first universes to be converted and really become popular in Arma, but it also has an interesting relationship with copyright, which we're going to quickly segue into. Anyway, this is pretty anecdotal, but the first sci-fi mods I remember seeing from Arma was a Stormtrooper and an AT-AT. That mod is not around anymore. I believe the creator's reason is that he didn't want to be sued by Disney, which is not a terrible reason. The mouse is scary. That being said, it wouldn't be the last Star Wars mod, as later into the life of the game, Star Wars Milsim, or Starsim, became a huge part of the Arma 3 community. It wasn't until these massive Star Wars groups started popping up that I saw large-scale gameplay of total conversion mods, and I definitely feel like it was one of the reasons sci-fi groups are so big today in Arma. At the time, the main mod responsible for this was called Opposition. However, it had quite a few problems. These ranged from using ripped assets to stealing from other mod teams like Uptray, and even at one point putting the Steam IDs of Bohemia Interactive staff in a blacklist that would crash their game if they launched it with the mod loaded. I'm not making that up, that's real. Goes without saying, this mod has been removed quite a few times and has since been replaced by the hard work of other development teams that have made all their work from scratch, like Legion Studios and 3AS. Both of these are fantastic teams that I only have tremendous gratitude towards for letting me do crazy stuff like fighting in the Clone Wars battles from my childhood, all while not stealing people's assets. I think I probably should have interviewed these guys, but man, I ran out of time. Just know I appreciate you if you're listening. That does now lead me back to the question of, in terms of copyright, how legal are all of these mods? TLDR, they're not. Of course, there's a ton of exceptions that I'm going to go into, but Bohemia's official stance on them is that if a mod is using another entity's copyrighted works without permission, they do not support it, which is a very important thing to say. Bohemia Interactive is an incredibly supportive company when it comes to their modding community, but they also have to abide by, international copyright law. Yeah. There's been a few instances like Opposition where copyright motions were pushed on them and a mod gets removed. This has also happened with the fabled Mass Effect mod, but for the most part, IP holders don't really care all that much about mods being made with their stuff, and actually in some specific
I'm really disappointed that Mass Effect got that treatment out of everything. That's really sad to hear. I would have liked to see a Mass Effect mod. Goddamn.
IP holders don't really care all that much about mods being made with their stuff, and actually in some specific cases, they're more than okay with it. The two examples I love to bring up are Tiberium Genesis and Operation Trebuchet. I am not a big fan of 343 Studios, or Halo Studios, whatever they're calling themselves now. However, I can only give them credit for how supportive they've been to the Halo modding effort for Arma, showing Optray off in their blog posts and even sending free keys to some of the mod developers to play future Halo games. This is also something that Scorch brought up in our interview. I know you've had interactions with Microsoft and/or 343 before?
It was back in 2016. I had gone to RTX. So while I was there, I got to talk to one of the 343 guys, the community guys. I don't remember his name I think it was Grim Brother 1. And basically through talking to him and kind of talking about it more, he was like, yeah, we actually have heard of your mod. We think it's pretty cool. And I talked to him, and there was another 343 guy who just went by Ken M. And he was probably the main guy I talked to the most. But basically, I had a short little interview with them and talked about the mod a little bit, and I got featured in, I think, their little community update posts. It was an official acknowledgement, which obviously is always a pretty big deal.
And the other example I mentioned was Tiberium Genesis, which actually got a formal agreement to make the mod from EA with some stipulations, which Century talked about from that team.
I had to do the same with EA and Bohemia to get the IP rights to do that, because Bohemia has asked me for that. And I had to contact EA, and I had to struggle with EA and Bohemia together to get a solution. So
that's really interesting. So how was that whole process?
Some rules, it's not allowed to have the name Command & Conquer in it. because EA doesn't want to do anything to do with this. So means that the publics, the users are not claiming to EA for bugs and such stuff.
Gotcha.
The music we have added, you have to announce the tracks and who is the owner. Biggest point is for non-commercial use only.
All in all, copyright is something that will probably always plague the modern scene of the Arma games, and for the most part, I believe Bohemia has done a pretty decent job of navigating it. Continuing back with the mods, I know trying to showcase them all would be like trying to dry up the ocean with a paper towel. I probably haven't mentioned this yet, but just on the Steam Workshop, there is 33,000 mods for Arma.
I believe it.
If you tried out one Arma mod every day, it would take you over 90 years. So, suffice to say, I'm only going to cover some highlights, and it's lightning round time, so buckle in. First, there is Scion Conflict, which we mentioned earlier. It's a completely original sci-fi property which has expansive lore, factions, and vehicles, all developed by Outworld Studios. Also, from some of those same people is the Dune mod, which in the past has let us perform just awful PvP events. There's also a few Fall of Man mods, which add the weapons and chimera from the Resistance games. Also goes without saying, there's a ton of mods for modern military assets, such as Red Hammer Studios, which has an entire assortment of modern vehicles and weapons with a shocking amount of quality to them. Another one being CUP, which stands for the Community Upgrade Project. They were originally formed under the goal of porting assets from previous Arma games to Arma 3, but now have gone out of their way to create high-quality custom assets. There's also plenty of SCP mods, such as Regulus's Containment Breach, or SAMTF, that brings that universe to life. It's probably not a surprise that there's mods for pretty much every human conflict that involves guns, from World War II to the East Asian War. That last one, by the way, an incredibly high quality mod. Probably seems niche to a lot of us in the West, but the effort put into that is amazing. They have an entire map, which is 1900 Shanghai, and I believe it's one of the best terrains you can play on Arma. Metal Gear, by the way, did not escape the clutches of Arma modders. There's a fully buildable mother base and playable characters throughout the games, so all you need is someone to talk like Big Boss and you have an operation to run. Battletech, that's another one in case you wanted massive mechs that can level a moon, or there's a mod for the Alien universe for fighting xenomorphs and Wayland Yutani. There's also, of course, Stalker when you want to LARP as duty with 40 of your friends, and at this point I'm realizing how deep of a hole I'm in right now and that my throat is getting dry. I also want to point out I've only mentioned mods that I've made entire videos out of. There is so much more, like the Aftermath mod, which actually I did make a video of that. I think it was just 3 years ago. It's Fallout, by the way. For my own sanity, I am going to stop there. Just know that for every mod I mention, times that by about 1,000, and you're close to how much there is for this game. It is hard to conceptually wrap your brain around it, and that's not mentioning all the people who have made custom missions and uploaded them, or made custom compositions for Zeus and Eden where you can just place entire like bunker or base setups. I am also not addressing the auxiliary mods that tie everything together. These are the kind of mods that can be used in every mission, whether it's Halo or Warhammer, and it kind of acts as a glue that brings the entire experience together. An amazing example being Ace, or the Advanced Combat Environment. It's definitely easier to say what Ace doesn't do rather than what it does, because what it does do is everything from ballistics to medical systems to game performance. Ace is a fantastic tool to help you run really cool events. There's also mods like Acre and Task Force Radio that allow us to connect a TeamSpeak server to Arma to use it as local VoIP. I'm also telling you this in the off chance that you've ever wondered why we had like 100 people in a TeamSpeak server at the start of a video. That is why. There's also mods to replace game sounds to be more immersive, or to change particle effects for stuff like explosions. On top of that, there's also mods that add features to the Eden editor Zeus that enable incredible things in the game. A developer that's made a few of those goes by Fenosi, and I of course had the privilege to talk with them as well.
Those who have played Arma 3 regularly, you might know me from
Holy
the
shit,
Plus
those
series
meteors?
of mods,
Oh my god.
primarily by me adding Zeus modules and or scripts to the game that mission makers and Zeus's alike could use to enhance the experience. Favorite mod that I've ever made? It's gotta be Sci-Fi Support Plus.
Yeah,
or
Sci-Fi
Plus.
I was thinking of it. I was like, if I was in your shoes, it'd probably be like the mod that can drop like 1,000 bolter shells across an entire map if you set the settings right.
It's just so fun to use.
I wanted to talk with you because a lot of the work you do feels like vital stitch work between these mods, especially the script suites that you create, like Sci-Fi Support Plus and Fire Support Plus. A great example is the one we just ran with like the Mechanicus and stuff. We used the Necron teleporter. The teleporter itself was like the most efficient way to spawn Necrons. Literally only through the Necron teleporter we could like reliably spawn them.
But at the end of the day, the goal's always been to just improve the game overall and allow mission makers and Zeus's to just make better missions. My modding journey kind of started with a bit of a
Holy shit.
frustrating reason, actually. So originally in the Arma 3 beta,
Oh
if I
my
remember
God.
correctly, there used to be
Those pelicans
a
are getting
transport
annihilated,
module
dude.
to
What the fuck?
fire 230mm HE rockets. This was removed on the full release of the game. So what I ended up doing was patching said module back in, and that's how I started Fire Support Plus. When I saw how much the community appreciated such quality of life kind of upgrades to the game, it personally gave me like a drive to just keep going and making more stuff.
Finosi has made a lot of miscellaneous mods, by the way. He also has 5 pages of contributions to the Arma workshop. One that I want to point out specifically is this rocket script that, if you'll remember, Scorched used as my scripting example. Finosi saw that and decided it should be a mod, so now it is. Hopefully now at this point you're starting to get the idea that modding in Arma is an ecosystem where a bunch of teams and mods work together to create amazing experiences. Even on the community side of things, a lot of the developers work together and share their expertise to enrich the entire modding ecosystem as a whole. For example, the amazing Star Wars maps like Endor or Scarif were made by the terrain creator Nightovizard, who also worked on most of the maps for Optray, and one of the lead developers for Optray, Scorch, helped configure the steam tank in Empires of Old, and the guys that made that mod also helped texture the Imperial Knights by Webknight, who also made a melee system for There Is Only War Space Marines, and you can kind of get where I'm going with that. A ton of this community's modding endeavors are connected, and it's what makes Arma modding so fantastic and special to me. It's quickly becoming my actual dream that I'm just doing a justice in describing it. Also, before I continue, and this is a second pass edit edition, I got some honorable mention mods that were created to run single mission files. 2 great examples are Super Miller Land, a mission that uses Miller, one of the main characters in the Arma 3 campaign, to play a Mario-like platformer, as well as Armageddon, a survival mission with meteors and tornadoes that I have put way too many hours into. The next modding subject I wanted to touch on is the forbidden art of kit bashing. This is essentially when you take a bunch of other mods and combine them in an unholy conglomerate to create something new. A great example that we mentioned earlier was me trying to use the pirate mod Nassau to create a Warhammer fantasy event, which for what it was went pretty decently. By the way, there is a pirate mod with working ship and cannons. I completely forgot to mention it. Anyway, of course, the sky is the limit with kit bashing. One of the biggest examples I can think of is when I combined a bunch of mods to create an alternate future where Rome never fell, and we just had these sci-fi legionaries running around conquesting. It was fantastic. Then quickly moving on to another subject, Arma can also be used to not play a video game. What I mean by that is that it is surprisingly an effective art and animation tool. I personally have a ton of experience with this. The first thing that got me popular on YouTube was a web series I made called Harp in Arma 3 that had a bunch of animated and cinematic moments throughout it. However, I also have Mosconi to talk with about it. I really hope I pronounced his username right. I never asked him our entire interview. And for those unfamiliar, before we jump into that interview, he's the person that's made Scorch or the Battle of Yonkers using Arma 3 as an animation tool. Here is the
And we've checked out Mosconi on the channel here quite a bit. I do recall him. We checked out the Battle of Yonkers actually back in the day. Didn't get a whole lot of views on our channel here, the reaction of it. But Battle of Yonkers was sick. We did check that video out. And at the time I watched it, man, I didn't even know that that was Arma, that he made it in. So fantastic work on that, I have to say.
Scorch or the Battle of Yonkers using Arma 3 as an animation tool. Here is the interview. Kind of want to just pick your brain on the whole process of like using Arma as a filmmaking tool. I know a lot of your videos are composition, so it's not entirely Arma. There's obviously like the backbone is Arma models and animation sets.
I have like 3,000 hours in Arma. I've only played like 2 hours worth of multiplayer.
That's crazy.
It was basically just me messing around with AI and Zeus. And I spent like 2,000 hours doing that. I'm like, wow, this is like, because when I was a little kid, I used to play with like the green army guys. I'm like, wow, this is like the video game version of that. So I'm just making my own battles and stuff like that. And then I find Gcam.
Oh yeah.
And that's where it all went down. What if we download Reshade? What if we add depth of field? What if I, like for Scorch, shout out to Black Cell Audio, what if we do a full custom score in sound design?
Really?
Like,
wow.
Yeah. Now it's like a full like movie production now. Like everything is built from the ground up. It gets pretty complicated with the coding.
I can bet.
But like with the tools that like we have now, like I'm surprised that Machinima isn't making a comeback, because it's so easy to make like good stories with like simple tools, you know?
I know Arma has an animation kind of program in it where you can set up sequenced animate. Is that something you're utilizing a lot?
I just use what's in game. I know Web Knight is super big on that, so maybe he'll teach me one day.
I did his interview. Actually, his was 2 days of interviews, because that man is like an encyclopedia. A creature, really.
When I started producing Scorch, I did not know a single thing about Warhammer. I just thought the Casterkin looked really badass.
I mean,
so I'm like,
that's fair.
Rogue, he makes Rogue and Soup.
Yep.
They are one of the lead developers for ICP. They make fantastic stuff. So I was like, I gotta make a story with this. There is so much assets.
So you were talking about you're using mostly like pre-canned animations. I assume you're also using workshop animation sets that you find, or is it like mostly vanilla?
Shout out to Web Knight again.
I did notice the melee ones,
yes,
and I stole that exact same thing way before I did like weekly haha funny kind of content. I had a series called Harp going on.
No. It's funny that you say that. My World War Z series was inspired by your Harp cinematics.
That's crazy.
Like the animations, it's all in the debug console, so everything's timed. My debug console just looks like a mess now because there is so much like code. Like I have a couple photos of just the scene builds. I think one of the scene builds.
I would love to see them.
The main battle scene for Scorch had over like 15,000 objects in it. Secret though to like getting good frames is I use Gcam most of it. There is a setting where you can lower like the time. So I record at 1% speed for every single scene, and then I put it into Premiere Pro and I speed it up 995%, and that's how I get the 60 FPS with like 500 AI running around.
I use the exact same. I use set act time 0.01, and then I literally do the exact same thing. It's like a dark secret. And with that, I think I'm done with my very brief mod showcase. This modding community is truly amazing, and I believe the developers have done a decent job at nurturing it. In fact, Bohemia does their own modding competition called Make Arma Not War that they've run for quite a few years, and not only awards prizes to mod developers, but mission makers and game mode devs as well. Bohemia also has a decent track record of hiring members of its community that have shown great talent, something that I definitely remember Web Knight mentioning.
Talked with the guy who made Resist campaign for Arma 3, and then he got hired by Bohemia. Because the work that he did was, he basically did an official expansion to Arma 3 campaign, and like with the quality of an Arma 3 campaign and beyond, it's like he had some of the things in his like mini campaign, as he called it, that Arma 3 didn't have it for a moment. He had like underground levels that you can go and stuff like that, and that blew my mind.
On top of all of that, almost all recent DLC for Arma 3 has been made by mod teams, who, with financial agreement from Bohemia, make spanning mod projects that otherwise wouldn't exist. The best example of this is SOG Prairie Fire, which is the best Vietnam War experience I've had in any video game. The passion they had for this project, interviewing veterans, getting their history right, and the talent that they put into their assets and game design is incredible. And on top of that, they've used the project to advocate for real-life issues such as veteran recognition. One of the most touching examples of this is when the devs of Prairie Fire helped campaign for Colonel Paris Davis to be awarded the Medal of Honor for his actions during the Battle of Bong Sun, where Paris was wounded 4 times in his successful attempts to save 4 other critically wounded U.S. soldiers despite being given the order to leave them. Also, despite his officers recommending him for the medal twice, he never received it. The devs then used their unreleased mod, with the encouragement from Bohemia, to recreate scenes from the battle, which would eventually help in the result of Colonel Paris Davis finally being awarded his overdue medal. It's also truly worth being a quote-unquote paid mod, because it was actually a full game experience that they delivered to the customer. I could talk for another hour about how much I like SOG Prairie Fire, and a great example of how much I like it is the next video after this one is going to be an Arma operation in SOG Prairie Fire. So, you know, subscribe if you want to see when that comes out. There's so many. There's so many, Walrus. The other creator DLC that I love to mention is Spearhead 1944, which I have had one of my best Arma experiences ever with, which was playing their campaign for 7 hours straight with my friends, and it's World War II, so it's cool. I'm also biased because they're the only people that have ever invited me to like an official Arma event. So thank you guys. And my
Fair
last
enough.
example I can give for Bohemia's support of their modding community is that if you search Bush Lurker in the editor, you will find a statue. Bush Lurker in the early days of Arma modding was a god among men, creating unique and amazing terrains, as well as being notorious for spending his time helping other developers and always being there to lend a hand when someone needed help with a project. Tragically, in 2017, he passed away. It affected a lot of the community, and one developer that he helped made a statue asset to remember him by. Bohemia Interactive took that a step further by officially adding the statue and placing it on their new map Malden 2035, which, by the way, Bush Lurker helped create the textures for. So, on that somber
That's
yet
nice.
good note, I believe that ends this section. Alright, I'm finished, and now on with the pretty big elephant in the room. Arma 3 is not the latest Arma game to be released because Arma Reforger exists.
You took the high road and...
Yeah, I wonder what he's going to say about Reforger here. I got mixed feelings on Reforger. It's definitely not a complete game, that's for sure, but neither is Arma 3, but I don't know. Reforger, the UI, there is definitely some issues with it. It's fun. The gameplay is fun. The gameplay loop's fun. There's a lot of servers, even modded servers are coming along. I don't think the tools are there. I don't think the support's there yet. I think it has potential, but I don't think it's to that level of Arma 3 yet.
Left me on the low road, but the low road is good enough for me.
Okay, technically the next Arma game that came after Arma 3 was Arma Argo, but no one talks about that one. Arma Reforger, in essence, was originally marketed as a tech demo because after 20 years, Bohemia Interactive has finally made a completely new engine called Infusion. Since now the plan was to create Arma 4 on this new engine, they wanted to put out a test of concept and a platform that the modding community could mess around with before the next sequel. That was Arma Reforger, and since then it feels like the scope to Reforger has changed and BI is developing it much like a regular game while also working on Arma 4. So the question is, what do I think about it, and why is this video about Arma 3 and not Arma Reforger? Well, in short, I believe the Infusion engine is superior to Arma 3's in almost every way. The game looks better, in a lot of ways it runs better, and I'm told programming and modding in it gives developers far more options. However, feature-wise, it's pretty bare bones, and I do want to preference, this is not a new concept for Arma games. A lot of people that were around can probably remember waiting like an entire 2 years before going to Arma 3 from Arma 2, so I wouldn't be super worried about that concept alone. And while they've definitely fleshed out Reforger a bit since release, it still doesn't have stuff like Eden or a 2D mission editor, which is really holding it back. On top of that, like I just mentioned, it takes time for mod developers to move over to a new game, or some mod developers are already done and the new project doesn't even come over to Reforger, so that ends up making a vacuum for new teams to come around and create them. I also know a lot of mod teams didn't move over because it was advertised as a stopgap and they didn't see it as worth their time to put a lot of effort into. I'm also speaking a lot for them right now. I obviously asked this question to a lot of the teams I interviewed, so I'm going to let them speak on it. However, I want to give the warning that I want you to view this through the lens of Arma 3 developers talking about it and not Arma Reforger devs talking about it. I believe Arma 3 devs are going to be way more critical about Reforger because, well, they're modding Arma 3, and if you asked Reforger devs, I believe the outlook would be a lot more positive. I still think the Arma 3 mod devs were overall pretty positive about Reforger and are excited for its future, but they're a lot more critical of it as well, so keep that in mind.
Arma Reforger as the next step for me, it feels like one step further, 2 step backward, or 1 step forward and 2 step backward, right? Because an easy example, I see a cool mod coming out in Arma 3 workshop. I'm like messaging my guys and like, yo, look at this cool thing. You want to test it out and like play with it? And people are like, yeah, sure, let's go. I installed the mod from the workshop. I launch it through launcher. I go into LAN, right? I host a game, and since I have port forwarding, people can just connect. And like 5 minutes and we're already in game and testing it out. But in Reforger, it is so hard just to like spend the time with the boys that I just don't feel right in that game. It looks amazing, like what they're doing with an engine, right? I'm really looking forward to what they're gonna do with an engine and like what kind of possibilities will be there, right? A lot of people who are playing, like old players from Arma 2 were like, what's the point to play that thing if we have all the mods in Arma 2? Especially DayZ was a big thing, right? Back in 2012. I think it like the mod came out, right? And everybody was playing that. So when Arma 3 came out, nobody was paying attention to that thing. Oh, new Arma series. Does it have DayZ mod? No, fuck it. Same with Arma Reforger, right? I was just having a feeling with Arma Reforger that a lot of players are just not moving there because there is not too much content. You know, you will play like basic game modes in the basic setting for like a week, but that's it, right? But they are listening to the most part of the community. People were telling that they want more complicated medical system, and they delivered that, and they delivered like something in between vanilla and ace, which is like you have like bandages, you know.
I was really happy with that. Yeah,
it actually, I really like that. I was thinking about replicating it in Arma 3, but there is mods like that.
I think Arma Reforger shows a lot of promise, but right now it has a lack of accessibility, right? It lacks the access to a Eden editor. But when we look at mission making, which is the core of I'm able to play Arma, is you need a mission maker who knows his shit, makes a good mission so we can all play it together. To do it in Arma Reforger right now, we're talking about learning the equivalent of Unreal Engine 5. I don't want to learn an engine like as a hobby.
Biggest thing is Reforger is still in its children's shoes.
Yes.
Kinder.
Still in the beginning, still
Sky German.
a lot of stuff to be done, like tanks, working tracks and such stuff. Right now, Red Hammer Studios or whatever did some tanks and did their own things, but it's not originally. So I have to say, I should not start to mod in Reforger because I really like the new engine. I really like the emissive part because I really want to see Tiberium fields glowing and reflecting the light. If I learn to mod in Reforger, I'm sure I won't mod anymore in Arma 3. The community is still players.
Yes.
You know?
So I like that they put a strong focus into the modding because they know that's exactly what's keeping Arma 3 alive. Yeah, it's a completely different system compared to like how you would jump into Eden and make Eden doesn't exist.
I despise
it's like a different program.
That's my number one, like, to have to mission make out of game, treat it like you're modding to make a mission, I think is the number one thing holding back Reforger. So in summary, we like Arma Reforger, and we're hopeful that it will continue to grow and mature on our way towards Arma 4.
It's the best thing about
which,
the
by
game,
the way,
plain and
during
simple.
our last anniversary celebration, this wonderful thing came on screen. Arma 4 is set to release in 2027, which is definitely a very long time, but Rogue made a good point about a silver lining. What do you think about the Arma 4 release date of 2027?
But I'm actually happy about that. If Arma 3 is going to be coming out next year, there's only a certain amount of time left for my mods on Arma 3. With Arma 4 coming out in 2027 now, it's like my mods at least have another 2 years to be worked on and enjoyed.
So to close out the Arma Reforger conversation, I am very hopeful for the game, and in fact we have short-term plans to actually do events in it. There is already fantastic mods showing up for that game, such as a Fallout one I saw, as well as a homebrew sci-fi one with ships and all. So time will tell how this segment ages. Oh my god, my throat is going. You can tell I've been talking for a little too long. Hopefully our hope in Bohemian Interactive and Reforger pays off, and oh my god, I sound like a 60-year-old smoker. I am going to take a break here and then continue to record the narration after I don't sound like a frog. Hey everyone, I am back. My esophagus doesn't feel like sandpaper anymore, so essentially what I'm saying is that hopefully our hope pays off and Arma Reforger turns into something beautiful on our way towards Arma 4 in the next like 3 years or so. Now the last thing I wanted to cover before I wrap this up is getting into Arma itself. It's crazy all the new people that continue to flow into this 11-year-old game, and if I remember right, the sales figure for the last Arma sale was 500,000 copies. So I'm sure at least one of you has gotten it recently and are curious about how to even play this game. In Arma 3's current phase, it is very hard to just get in the game and join a public server to have fun, especially if you're looking for a modded experience. That being said, King of the Hill, fantastic game mode to play if you just want to try out Arma and shoot people. No mods required, all scripted. Anyway, most of the time you have to find a unit or group hosting events, which
I think he's just talking about how to like join a server at the end here. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I've played Arma 3. I know how to do that. Respectfully, we're gonna skip to the end of that segment.
There's a land
Respectfully, no offense, but I know how to do that. I can manage that one.
The sweet forever.
As we now come to the end of this video, the only thing I can really think of is how much I didn't get to cover. There was a legal battle over the name Arma 2, or that someone's making a Titanfall mod right now, or really diving into Arma Reforger more, but I suppose that is a next time kind of thing. This obviously has not been my normal content, however, it was very refreshing to make, besides the stress that I might butcher the subject. If you did enjoy, consider subscribing. It may not be the last time I do this. Or, if you want to watch full videos on some of the mods I mentioned, check out the channel. There is a lot of stuff. I can't thank everyone enough that made it to this point. I think my closing words are done, and I honestly don't know how to end this video. So, that's it. Have a wonderful day. Thank you, Bohemia, for making some wonderful games, and thank you guys for being wonderful viewers.
You'll be the one dream.
Very nice, guys.
I'm hoping will come true.
I think that's the end. I'm gonna get copyright striked if I play that music, so I'm just gonna see. Yeah, I think it's just credits. All right, guys, that was awesome. That was the game that can make your games come true by Rubik's Raptor. Yes, Arma and Arma 3 in general, right? What a fantastic game. Military simulator at its roots, but you really can do just about anything in it. It's a great game, a great sandbox. That is really what it is in general. This video was less of like a video essay on Arma and more of just like a I guess explaining what the game can be, potentially. It can kind of be whatever you want it to be, which is fine, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. I didn't mind this type of video at all. Yeah, no, I thought it was really, really good to see exactly what was involved in Arma, because again, a lot of these mods I had no idea existed. Like the Tiberian Genesis one, I will say, that RTS style in Arma, no idea that existed, so that was very, very cool to learn about and to see. The Star Wars mods, same type of thing. Yeah, no, I thought that was great to see. If you guys enjoyed, make sure you guys leave a like, subscribe for more content from me. Of course, leave recommendations down in the comments below. A big thank you to all of our members, all of Hastati, our Principe, Dagenhart, and of course, our Prefect Fear. And big thank you to Hobbit for this recommendation today. But yeah, guys, without any further delay, this has been Centurion, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace, guys.